When you give too much without receiving equal effort, you unknowingly set a dangerous precedent. You teach others that your time, your love, and your energy are freely available no matter how they treat you. And once they believe that they don't have to work to keep you, they stop valuing what you bring to the table. This is the harsh truth that many people overlook. They think that giving endlessly will make someone appreciate them more. But the opposite is true. The more you give without requiring anything in return, the more you are taken for granted. Human nature craves challenge, and what is easily available is often dismissed. Think about the things in life that hold the most value. They are the things that require effort, persistence, and commitment to attain. A rare diamond isn't found lying on the surface of the ground. It is buried deep beneath layers of rock. And only those willing to dig for it will ever own it. The same principle applies to relationships. If you make yourself too easy to access, too predictable, too giving without boundaries, you eliminate the need for the other person to put in any effort. And the moment effort disappears, so does appreciation. Now, this doesn't mean you should play games or manipulate situations, but it does mean you must understand your worth. Your value must be earned, not handed out freely. People respect what they have to work for. When someone has to prove themselves, when they have to meet your standards, when they have to show up consistently, that's when they realize they are dealing with someone who is truly valuable. And this is exactly the lesson you must teach to someone who has taken you for granted. Too often, people operate from a place of fear. They fear that if they don't give endlessly, if they don't constantly prove their love, if they don't bend over backward to make someone happy, they will lose that person. But what they fail to see is that by giving too much, they are losing themselves. They are pouring all their energy into someone who is not reciprocating. And in doing so, they are reinforcing a dynamic where they are the only one putting in the effort. What happens when you take a step back? When you stop overextending yourself, when you stop doing all the work in the relationship, you create a shift. That person begins to notice your absence. They realize that something has changed. The constant flow of energy they once received from you without effort is no longer there. This is where the lesson begins. It forces them to question their actions, their assumptions, and their treatment of you. Suddenly, they have to face the reality that they could lose something they once took for granted. This is not about punishing anyone or playing mind games. It's about setting a standard for yourself. It's about making it clear that if someone wants access to your time, your love, and your energy, they must earn it. They must show up for you just as much as you have shown up for them. And if they don't, then they don't deserve the privilege of being in your life, because your love is not a discount item that anyone can grab without effort. It is a treasure, and only those who recognize its worth should have the opportunity to experience it. The moment you understand this, everything changes. You no longer feel the need to chase, to convince, to overcompensate. You realize that the right people will naturally gravitate toward you when you carry yourself with self-respect. And those who only wanted the benefits of your presence without putting in the work will fade away. And that's exactly how it should be. But here's the crucial part. This only works when you truly believe in your own worth. You cannot fake confidence. You cannot pretend to have high value while still allowing people to mistreat you. Your actions must align with your standards. You must be willing to walk away from situations that do not serve you. You must be willing to let go of people who do not appreciate you. And most importantly, you must be willing to invest in yourself, to grow, to elevate, to become the kind of person who naturally commands respect without having to beg for it. When you make this shift, everything around you changes. People begin to see you differently. The same ones who once ignored your efforts will suddenly feel the need to prove themselves to you. They will wonder why you are no longer giving them the same access, why you are no longer available at their convenience. And this is where the chase begins. Not because you manipulated them, but because you finally taught them a hard lesson. They can no longer take you for granted. They must now work to keep you in their life. When someone knows they have constant access to you, they stop valuing your presence. It's not because they don't care. It's because they have never felt what it's like to miss you. They have never been put in a position where they have to question whether or not you will always be there. This is where silence and distance become your most powerful tools. When words fail, when explanations are ignored, when your kindness is taken for granted, the best thing you can do is withdraw, not in anger, not as a game, but as a statement of self-respect. Silence speaks louder than any argument ever could. It forces the other person to sit with their own thoughts, to confront the emptiness left behind when your presence is no longer filling their world. People often assume that to make someone understand their value, they must talk more, explain more, try harder. But in reality, the opposite is true. The moment you stop explaining, the moment you stop proving, the moment you stop reaching out, you shift the entire power dynamic. They are no longer being fed constant reassurance, and for the first time, they have to wonder what's going on. They have to question their place in your life. Distance creates clarity. When you are too close to a situation, emotions cloud your judgment. You react impulsively, you overthink. You try to fix things that aren't yours to fix. But when you step back, you gain perspective. You start to see the reality of the situation. Who is actually putting in effort? Who genuinely values you? And who is only there for convenience? Most importantly, distance forces the other person to confront what life feels like without you. If they have been taking you for granted, this is the moment when they start to notice the void. The beauty of silence is that it cannot be ignored. Words can be dismissed, excuses can be made, but silence lingers. It leaves room for reflection. It creates a sense of uncertainty, and uncertainty is what triggers pursuit. When someone is unsure whether they still have a hold over you, they begin to panic. They start to remember all the ways you were good to them. They replay old conversations, they revisit old memories, and suddenly they realize, not because you beg for their attention, not because you try to prove your worth, but because your absence is now undeniable. This is why pulling away is so effective. It disrupts the pattern. If someone is used to you always being available, always reaching out first, always giving without hesitation, they assume that's just who you are. They assume that no matter what, you will always come back. And that assumption makes them comfortable. But when you break that pattern, when you stop calling, stop texting, stop chasing, you force them to wake up. They are no longer in control of the situation. They can no longer predict your next move. This uncertainty is what sparks curiosity, and curiosity is the first step toward action. When you give someone space, you give them the opportunity to recognize your value on their own. And when someone realizes something on their own, it becomes real to them. If you try to explain your worth, it comes across as needy. But when they feel the effects of your absence, when they have to sit with their own thoughts and emotions, that realization becomes personal. They now have to decide whether or not they are willing to step up and meet your standards. But here's the thing. This only works if you are truly willing to walk away. If you use silence as a manipulation tactic, but secretly still wait for their response, they will sense it. True power comes from knowing that whether they chase you or not, you are still whole. Your worth does not depend on their reaction. Your happiness is not tied to their choices. When you operate from this mindset, your energy shifts. You are no longer someone waiting to be chosen. You are someone who chooses. And that is the most attractive, most powerful position to be in. People are naturally drawn to what they cannot easily have. It's a fundamental truth about human nature. What is scarce is valued, and what is readily available is often overlooked. When someone feels like they have full access to you without any effort on their part, they start to take that presence for granted. It's not necessarily because they don't care about you, but because the human mind is wired to crave challenge and exclusivity. This is why distance creates attraction. When you are too available, when you give too much without requiring anything in return, you remove the element of desire. But when you pull away, when you become less accessible, you trigger a psychological shift. They begin to chase. Think about the things in life that people value most. Whether it's a high-paying job, an exclusive luxury item, or even an elusive goal, the common factor is difficulty. When something requires effort, it is seen as valuable. If a job were easy to get, people wouldn't see it as prestigious. If a product were cheap and available everywhere, people wouldn't see it as a luxury. The same principle applies to relationships. If someone knows you will always be there no matter what, they don't feel the need to put in effort. But the moment they sense that they might be losing you, that effort kicks in. This is why people who exude confidence and independence are naturally attractive. They don't beg for attention. They don't try to prove their worth. And they certainly don't chase. They know their value. When you step back and become less available, you are sending a silent message. I am not desperate for your attention. I am not waiting around for your validation. I am secure in my own worth. And that message is powerful. Scarcity breeds urgency. When people believe that something is slipping away from them, they react instinctively. They start to think about what they could be losing, and suddenly they realize just how much they want it. The same person who once ignored your text now finds themselves checking their phone, waiting for a message from you. The same person who once assumed you would always be there now begins to wonder what changed. This is the shift you create when you stop being so readily available. The mistake most people make is thinking that being distant means playing games, but this isn't about manipulation. It's about shifting your energy. It's about prioritizing yourself instead of constantly trying to prove your worth to someone else. When you start focusing on your own goals, your own growth, your own happiness, you naturally become less available. And when you are less available, people start to notice. They start to wonder what's taking up your time. They start to question if they still hold the same place in your life. That curiosity alone is enough to make them chase. People are drawn to mystery. When you reveal everything about yourself too quickly, when you make it obvious that you will always be there, you remove that sense of intrigue. But when you maintain an air of independence, when you have a life outside of any one person, you become more attractive. You create the feeling that they need to work to understand you, to earn your time, to be a part of your world. And that effort is what makes them value you more. The moment you stop over-explaining yourself, stop trying to convince someone to care, and stop making yourself too available, you shift the balance. You become the one who is being pursued instead of the one doing all the chasing. And that's when everything changes. When someone realizes that they could lose you, they begin to act differently. They start to put in effort. They start to appreciate the things they once overlooked. They start to chase. Not because you force them to, but because they now see you in a different light. People value what they have to work for. It's an undeniable truth that applies to every area of life. When something comes too easily, the mind instinctively assigns it less importance. It's not because the thing itself lacks value, but because human nature equates effort with significance. This is why people chase after what feels just out of reach, and why they often fail to appreciate what is readily available. If you give too much without requiring anything in return, you make it easy for someone to take you for granted. But the moment you make it clear that your presence must be earned, everything shifts. When someone knows they don't have to try to keep you, they won't try at all. They assume you will always be there, no matter how they treat you, no matter what they do or don't do. But when you raise your standards, when you stop accepting the bare minimum and start demanding effort, suddenly they are forced to step up or step out. This is where you separate those who truly value you from those who only enjoyed the convenience of having you around. Effort is a reflection of interest. If someone truly wants to be in your life, they will show it. They won't just rely on empty words or occasional gestures. They will put in consistent effort. They will check in, make plans, prioritize you, and show you that they care in meaningful ways. But if someone only gives you the bare minimum, sporadic attention, half-hearted affection, or inconsistent communication, it's a clear sign that they don't value you enough to put in the work. The problem is that too many people accept this bare minimum, hoping that one day it will turn into something more. But it never does. If you accept less than you deserve, that's all you will ever get. The moment you stop tolerating half effort, you change the dynamic. You shift from being someone who waits for love to being someone who commands respect. You set the standard, and people either rise to meet it or they fade away. And that's exactly how it should be. You don't need to beg for someone's time or affection. You don't need to convince anyone to appreciate you. The right people will recognize your worth without you having to prove it. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that if they give more, the other person will finally see their value. They think that by being more available, more understanding, more forgiving, they will eventually be appreciated. But it doesn't work that way. The more you give without requiring effort in return, the less they feel the need to give anything at all. You teach people how to treat you by what you accept. If you keep accepting excuses, inconsistency, and lack of effort, you are telling them that it's okay to treat you that way. But when you start demanding more, when you make it clear that you won't stick around for anything less than real effort, you force them to make a decision. Either they step up or they step aside. This is why people chase those who require effort. It's not about playing games or making someone work unnecessarily. It's about creating a dynamic where they have to prove that they want you in their life. When someone has to invest time, energy, and thought into you, they naturally value you more. They see you as someone worth pursuing, someone worth keeping. And once they have put in that effort, they are less likely to take you for granted because they had to work to earn your presence. Many people are afraid to demand effort because they fear losing the person altogether. They worry that if they stop overgiving, the other person will walk away. But here's the truth. If someone leaves because you expect to be treated with respect and effort, they were never truly invested in you to begin with. Someone who genuinely cares will appreciate the opportunity to show you that they do. They won't see effort as a burden. They will see it as a privilege. Raising your standards isn't about being difficult or playing hard to get. It's about knowing your worth. It's about refusing to settle for someone who only puts in effort when it's convenient for them. When you set high standards, you attract people who are willing to meet them. You stop wasting time on those who are only halfway in. And you create space for the ones who are ready to show up fully. Effort is everything. It reveals true intentions, exposes real priorities, and ultimately determines whether or not someone is worthy of your time. The most powerful thing you can do in any situation is to remain unbothered. Indifference is one of the greatest tools of influence because it shifts the balance of power in your favor. When you show that you are not emotionally dependent on someone's validation, approval, or presence, they begin to feel your absence in a way they never did before. People want what they can't easily have. and they crave the attention of those who seem unaffected by their actions. The moment you detach emotionally, you create a dynamic where the other person starts questioning their significance in your life. They begin to wonder why you're not reacting, why you're not chasing, and why they no longer have control over your emotions. Being unbothered doesn't mean being cold or emotionless. It means mastering your emotions to the point where no one can manipulate your mood. Too many people give away their power by reacting impulsively to every slight, every delay in response, and every shift in someone's behavior. This is exactly what makes them predictable and easy to control. When someone knows that their absence, their words, or their actions can trigger a strong emotional response in you, they hold all the power. But when you stop reacting, when you remain calm, collected, and detached, suddenly they lose that control. They no longer feel as important, and this forces them to reevaluate their position in your life. People test boundaries. Whether consciously or unconsciously, they push to see how much they can get away with. If they realize that they can ignore you, treat you with inconsistency, or show minimal effort without any consequences, they will continue doing it. But if you show that you will not engage, that you will not react emotionally, and that you remain unfazed by their behavior, you become someone they can't figure out. This creates intrigue. It makes them think about you more. It makes them realize that they don't have the level of influence over you that they once did. This is why silence is so powerful. When someone expects you to argue, plead, or seek their attention, and instead you give them nothing, it forces them to reflect. They start to question their importance in your life. They begin to wonder if they miscalculated your level of interest. They become the ones overthinking. And the more they overthink, the more they find themselves drawn to you. The very act of wondering why you aren't reacting makes them chase you. Indifference is also a form of self-respect. It sends the message that your world does not revolve around any one person. You are too busy, too focused, and too in control of your own life to be affected by temporary shifts in someone else's behavior. When you embody this mindset, people naturally start valuing you more. They see you as someone who is rare, someone who doesn't need constant reassurance, someone who doesn't fall apart when ignored, and someone who remains stable no matter what. And that stability is attractive. It is magnetic. Most people operate from a place of fear. They fear losing someone, so they overcompensate. They fear rejection, so they chase. They fear being left behind, so they cling. But fear-based actions always lead to negative outcomes. When you act out of fear, you lower your own value in someone's eyes. You become predictable, easy to manipulate, and easy to disregard. But when you act from a place of confidence, when you trust that your presence is a privilege, not a given, you command respect. People don't take you for granted because they know that you are not easily moved. The hardest part about adopting this mindset is breaking old patterns. If you are used to reacting emotionally, it will feel unnatural at first. You will want to respond to their silence. You will want to prove your worth. But the moment you do that, you give them the upper hand again. This is why self-discipline is crucial. You must train yourself to step back, to breathe, and to remain composed. Over time, you will start to notice a shift, not just in how people treat you, but in how you view yourself. You will feel more powerful, more in control, and less affected by external circumstances. Being unbothered is not about pretending. It's about truly believing that no one determines your worth except you. It's about knowing that whether someone stays or leaves, whether they chase or walk away, you remain whole. The moment you internalize this, everything changes. People sense that energy. They realize that they can no longer shake you, and that's when they start trying harder, not because you asked them to, but because they can feel that they might lose something valuable. The greatest shift happens when you prioritize yourself. When you shift your energy away from trying to impress, please, or gain the approval of someone else, and instead focus entirely on your own growth, your own happiness, and your own purpose, you become magnetic. People are naturally drawn to those who move with confidence, direction, and self-respect. When you operate from a place of deep self-worth, you don't need to chase, you don't need to convince, and you don't need to beg for attention. You become the kind of person others want to be around, not because you seek their validation, but because you radiate a sense of purpose that is rare and undeniable. Too many people make the mistake of putting someone else on a pedestal, acting as if their worth is dependent on how much attention or affection they receive. This mindset is dangerous because it places your happiness in someone else's hands. It makes you reactive instead of proactive. It makes you wait for someone else to decide your value, instead of recognizing that your value was never up for negotiation in the first place. The moment you stop measuring your worth based on someone's level of interest, you reclaim your power. You stop being affected by their inconsistency, their silence, or their lack of effort, because you understand that none of it defines you. When you focus on yourself, everything changes. You stop wasting time analyzing their every move, trying to figure out why they pulled away or wondering if you did something wrong. Instead, you channel all of that energy into building yourself. You invest in your passions, your health, your mindset, and your future. You become so consumed with becoming the best version of yourself that you don't even have time to notice whether they're watching or not. And ironically, that's exactly what makes them start paying attention. People can sense when you are overly focused on them. They can feel when your emotions are tied to their every action. This is why the more you chase, the less they appreciate you. But when you detach, when you truly let go and put yourself first, they start noticing. They start wondering why your energy is no longer directed at them. They start realizing that you are not as easily available as before. And this triggers something powerful: curiosity. They begin to feel the shift in power. And suddenly the rules are reversed. They start thinking about you more, not because you are trying to get their attention, but because you have taken it away. The most attractive people are those who live for themselves. They move with confidence, they have a sense of purpose, and they are unbothered by the temporary shifts in someone else's interest. This kind of energy is rare, and because it is rare, it is valuable. The moment you embody this, you stop settling for anything less than you deserve. You stop engaging in one-sided efforts, and you stop trying to force connections that should flow naturally. It's important to understand that prioritizing yourself doesn't mean you don't care about others. It doesn't mean you become selfish or unkind. It simply means that you refuse to make anyone else the center of your world. You refuse to put your life on hold waiting for someone to appreciate you. You refuse to make someone else's inconsistency the cause of your emotional distress. Instead, you focus on what you can control: your mindset, your actions, your goals, and your growth. The moment you step into this mindset, you realize how much time and energy you wasted before. You see how much of your power was being drained by overanalyzing someone's text, waiting for their attention, or trying to prove your worth. You realize that none of that was ever necessary. The only thing that was ever needed was for you to recognize your own value and act accordingly. And when you do that, the dynamic shifts entirely. People start viewing you differently. They sense your confidence. They sense your self-sufficiency. They sense that you are no longer looking to them for validation, and that unsettles them. They begin to chase, not because you ask them to, but because they feel the shift in energy. They feel that they are no longer the center of your world, and that realization makes them want to be. This is why the most powerful thing you can do is redirect your energy inward. The more you invest in yourself, the more you elevate your own value. And when you elevate your value, you stop needing to convince anyone else to see it. They will see it on their own. They will feel it in the way you carry yourself, in the way you handle their absence without reacting, and in the way you continue thriving regardless of who stays or who leaves. And that is what makes them chase.